I never believed in curses. Not in ghosts, not in demons, not in anything that couldn't be explained with reason. If someone had told me back then that a folded piece of paper could destroy a life, I would have laughed. But that was before I found one, before I learned what was written inside. Sleep and we never got along. Even as a kid, I'd lie awake long after everyone else had drifted off, staring at the ceiling, listening to the slow breathing of the house. Sometimes I'd drift, not fully asleep, half aware, half dreaming. They call it the rabbit sleep phase, that fragile bridge between waking and dreaming. That's where it always started, the dream. It was always the same. I was standing in a yellow room. Everything around me, walls, ceiling, even the light, was washed in that sick, mustard glow. And in the middle of the room, on the floor, there was a board game. Don't be angry, brother. Ludo. 4 colors, small tokens, a dice cup. Except this one was wrong. Only 2 tokens. One at the start, one near the end. Everything else, empty. Just endless open squares. No sound, no motion. Like I was staring at a painting. Every time I saw it, I'd wake up drenched in sweat, heart pounding, but with no fear, just confusion. It was so harmless, so meaningless, until it started to change. The first time, one of the tokens had moved forward by 1 square. The next time, 2. Always forward, never backward. No matter how much time passed between the dreams, the piece kept moving, as if something was playing the game while I slept. I never thought much of it, not until that summer, 2019. My father decided we'd spend it in the countryside, in his hometown, a small village somewhere in the Carpathians, all fog, cracked stone walls, and fields that seemed to hum when the wind moved through them. He wanted to restore his mother's old house, said he'd live there when he retired. The house had been locked up for over 30 years. No one had stepped inside since my grandmother's death. The door still had her initials carved into the frame. When we first entered, the smell hit us. That heavy mix of mold, dust, and something older. Like time itself had gone stale inside. We started cleaning. Old wardrobes, rusted sinks, broken furniture. There was a kind of sadness in every corner, as if the walls were waiting for us to apologize for opening them. Then, in one of the bedrooms, I found the bed, my grandmother's, still covered in faded sheets. We lifted the baseboard to check for rats or nests, and that's when I found it. Under the mattress, wrapped in an old knitted hat, were a few of my father's childhood things. A small knife, a marble, and a folded piece of paper, yellowed and fragile. I didn't open it then. I just slipped it into my pocket. I don't know why. Curiosity, maybe. But I felt something, like the paper was warm. That night, when everyone had gone to sleep, I unfolded it under my flashlight and froze. It was a drawing. Black ink on white paper, faded but still clear. The yellow room, the same game board, 2 tokens, and one of them, marked with a sharp X, had moved 2 squares forward. My stomach turned. The smell of ink mixed with something foul, like burnt hair. I flipped the page over. There were scribbles in another language, not handwriting I recognized. Old script, curved letters. Arabic, maybe, or something like it. I ran it through an online translator on my phone. It was patchy, words missing, broken sentences, but one line stood out clearly. Your sons will suffer. I remember whispering it out loud, over and over again, until it lost all meaning. It couldn't be about me. It couldn't be real. I wanted to throw it away, to tear it apart, but I didn't. Instead, I stared at it until my eyes burned. And at some point, I must have fallen asleep with the paper still in my hand. What I saw next wasn't a dream. I woke up, or thought I did. The room was dark except for a faint glow coming from the hallway. Someone was standing there, a silhouette. Heavy, wide-shouldered, unmoving. "My father?" I called out. No answer. Then it stepped closer, and I heard it breathe. Slow, deep, wet. A whisper slid out, low and deliberate. "My children suffered. So will yours." And everything went black. When I opened my eyes again, I was on the floor. Morning light leaking through the curtains. My family around me. My father shaking me, shouting my name. They said I'd been unconscious for hours, twitching, murmuring. When I finally stood up, my right hand was trembling uncontrollably, and between my fingers, still clutched, was the paper. Except now the ink was darker, and the X on the game board had moved again. That day I begged my father to tell me what he knew. He went pale, didn't say a word, just stared at the drawing, then at me, then at the floor. Finally, he said something I'll never forget. "This isn't the first time that paper's been found." Back when he was a boy, he and my uncle had played a gambling game with a woman from the village, a widow everyone called Old Gulaba. She was known for her herbs, her whispers, her jars filled with dried things that never rotted. They'd cheated her son out of money, using loaded dice. She'd smiled, said nothing, but when they left, she whispered after them, "Your children will move as your lies did, one by one." He never thought about it again, until his mother died suddenly that winter, until he started seeing the yellow room in his dreams. He thought it had ended with him, until I found the paper. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tried to convince myself it was all coincidence, mass hysteria, old guilt digging its way into the present. But the rational part of my brain was losing ground. At around 3 a.m., I heard something under the bed. Not scratching, not footsteps. Breathing. I reached down slowly. My fingers brushed something cold and papery. When I pulled it out, there it was again. The same folded page, the same drawing, except now there were 3 tokens. We called the village priest the next morning, a small, stooped man with cloudy eyes who smelled of smoke and pine sap. He listened to our story without interrupting once. When we were done, he said quietly, "This is a death binding. Whoever made it tied your family's life to an unfinished game." He asked if we still had the original paper. When I nodded, he told me not to touch it again. He'd need both soil from the house and something belonging to Old Gulaba, but she'd been dead for decades, so he told us to find the place she'd lived. "Whatever she left behind," he said, "will be where the curse still breathes." We searched the entire afternoon. The village had half collapsed. Empty barns, roofs caving in, windows gaping like open mouths. Finally, near the riverbank, we found it. A small cottage swallowed by ivy, Inside, everything was frozen in dust. And on the wall, written in charcoal, a phrase over and over again. Do not move the pieces. In the corner, an old wooden chest, and inside it, 2 empty soda bottles. My father froze. He whispered, "The bottles from the game. We used them as dice cups." The priest took them without a word. He said they were the vessels, that if the curse was cast through them, it could only be broken through them. He wrapped the paper around the neck of one bottle, sealed both with wax, and began to pray. Low, rhythmic, ancient words, the kind that make your skin feel thinner. Then he told us, when the bottles shatter, the binding will break. But the last player must accept the cost. We left the church that night with the bottles wrapped in cloth. The air outside felt heavier, like the whole valley was holding its breath. My father insisted on carrying them himself. He said it was his mistake, his responsibility. When we reached the old house, he went inside alone. We heard him speaking softly to the dark. Then, the sound of glass breaking. Once, twice, and then silence. Long, terrible silence. When I finally went in, the house was empty. The bottles shattered, the paper gone. My father standing by the window, looking out into nothing. He turned, smiled weakly, and said, "It's over." For a while, it was. No more dreams, no more whispers, no more movement on the board. I convinced myself it had been collective madness, that we'd all just wanted to believe something bigger was responsible for our fear. But deep down, something stayed. A question that kept gnawing. If it was over, why did the priest never return to his church? A year passed. 2. I went back to the city, back to work, back to sleepless nights. Then one evening I fell asleep at my desk, the same half-dreaming drift as before, and there it was again. The yellow room, the game board, the single die sitting perfectly still. And 4 tokens now, all moved. On the wall, written in fresh ink, were words I'd never seen before. The game ends when the last piece falls. I woke up gasping. My phone buzzed with a call from my uncle. He sounded terrified, said my father was gone, vanished from his bed in the middle of the night. No signs of struggle, no footprints outside, just one thing left behind, on his nightstand. A folded piece of paper, the game board, and all 4 tokens at the end. It's been 6 years since then. I haven't dreamed of the yellow room again, but every now and then I catch a glimpse of something on the edge of sleep, a faint flicker of color, a soft whisper just behind my ear. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I can still see the paper, folded, waiting. And I wonder if there was ever really a curse at all, or if the game was never about moving pieces, but about who picked up the board next. If you've listened this far, I want to ask you something. Have you ever dreamed the same dream more than once? Did it change, just a little, each time? If so, don't look for meaning. Don't try to finish it. Because maybe someone else already started the game, and they're just waiting for your turn.